Welcome to Bracket U, a college basketball podcast brought to you by Delphi Bracketology. This is our I'm going to start that over for anyone who's live because I think I played the wrong music. It's been a while, and I need to add Cade in here. Okay, so I'll cut the first 34 seconds. Here we go. Timeout. I did have the right music. All right, welcome to Bracket U, a college basketball bracket podcast brought to you by Delphi Bracketology. This is our 5th episode of the season as we are beginning our 8th year of bracketology and aim to bring weekly updates to those who want to know where their favorite team stands in regards to the NCAA tournament. This podcast is for the junkies who have March Madness all season long. We're able to do this and create new content thanks to sponsorships of Coca-Cola Bottling of Kokomo, generous donations. We received one today this week, a nice donation, and special thanks to Bob Thompson for creating our intro music and to Jared Morris of the Assembly Call for inspiring us to branch out and do new things. And so we have our full committee back here with Luke Smock and Cade Nelson joining us. We'll have an updated bracket in the morning. A lot of COVID news hitting the sports world with NFL teams, and now it's hitting the college basketball team. The CBS Sports Classic that was scheduled for Saturday has been canceled. No Ohio State versus Kentucky and no UCLA versus North Carolina. Not only were those fun games to watch, but those were really important games as far as bracketing. On Saturday, still scheduled, is the last year of the Crossroads Classic here in Indiana. With the 4 major Division I teams playing each other on a rotating basis. That will come to an end after this year. So joining me this week, as usual, Cade Nelson, our junior editor of Delphi Bracketology. And Cade, last week, what game was the most important for you in moving teams up and down the bracket?
I thought the Alabama-Memphis game was the most important, because it was a great win for a struggling Memphis team, being so low in our bracket. For them being able to pick up that quality quad 1 win was key for them to stay in the bracket and on the bubble. And it caused Alabama to maybe drop a few spots. I can't remember if we did ultimately drop them, but even if we did or didn't, it's not a terrible loss for them. But on paper, it looks like it was because they lost by 14. But, yeah, I think it was really key for Memphis to get that win and keep them in contention.
We'll talk seeds 1 through 11 coming up. We did drop Alabama a little bit this morning, and we moved Memphis back in despite 4 losses, which is kind of tough. But that was that quality of win. Luke Smock joins us after a romantic date 2 weeks ago and then some school obligations last week. Glad to have you back, Luke. What game was on your radar last week?
I'm going to go with Arizona, Illinois. That was a huge win for Arizona on the road. Illinois is a really good team, and they had all that issues of traveling, like you said. They had to fly into Indianapolis and drive to Illinois, which is always that worries people. And they still got the job done. I think they won 83-79, so that's a huge win for them. That actually boosted them up to the 1 seed line for us. And sadly, I guess I'll mention it, that the Boilermakers went down on a half-court heave. That was brutal, and I don't really want to talk about it too much.
So we'll move on. Our teams. My team loses a 22-point lead. Luke, you lose at a buzzer, and now Cade, your team has COVID issues and can't play a big game. So we got some interesting teams that we follow. My game of the week last week was Baylor 57, Villanova 36. Villanova's played some tough teams going forward. They drop a little bit for us, but Baylor has really solidified itself again as a top seed after being in that position during the COVID shutdown. We're likely a number 1 seed in 2020, and then last year winning the NCAA tournament in the bubble in Indianapolis, and they're right back at it despite losing 4 starters. Baylor is a top team for sure going forward. So now we're going to bring in our topic of the week, and that is our spreadsheet that we use. So we use warrennolan.com information thanks to that website and those people who put the net information together. We move that over to a Google Sheet for us to use. We're going to put that up here on the screen, and we're going to go through seeds 1 through 11, the at-large seeds, and talk about some of the discussions that we've had in to move the brackets. So we'll get to that here shortly. Again, I will always warn people that it is really way too early, even still, to begin brackets. The reason we do it is so that our members can practice getting used to comparing teams. So when it does come down to late January, February, and March, we are pretty sharp on what we're doing. And it's just there's so little difference between teams right now, but we do it anyway. And so if you like it, comment. If you don't, comment as well. But so we're going to try to share the screen here. And this is our spreadsheet. And we're just going to go right now. Our 1 seeds are Baylor, Arizona, Gonzaga, and Duke. The teams that could be pushing, I really believe, guys, the only team that we could argue to move up is probably Purdue because of their 2 quad 1 wins. Purdue versus Duke maybe would be the discussion. Luke, I'll turn to you first. You're the Purdue fan. Do you think there's a valid argument to keep Purdue a 1 seed because they did lose on a half?
Yeah, I mean, even as a Purdue fan, I think we got to leave it the way it is as of right now. I think this early, just looking at those numbers, Purdue's the only team in the top 4, maybe 5 seed lines that has a quad 3 loss. So I don't feel like you could have them as a 1 seed just looking at that as of right now. But obviously that'll change and there'll be losses for other teams. But as of right now, if you looked at it right now, I don't think you could change them.
Yeah, that loss is a quad 3 loss. It probably should have been a win, but probably the last 3 games, the Iowa game, the North Carolina State game after Rutgers, and Rutgers in the middle, Purdue has not played up to what we expect them to play. So I think we were comfortable in moving Purdue down here to the number 2 seed line. Kate, I'm going to come to you too. A surprising team for a lot of us this morning was Xavier, number 15 in the net. That's on the left-hand side of the screen if you're watching on YouTube. And we moved them up to the 8th overall seed, which is the last 2 seed. Why did we do that, Cade? What's so good about Xavier? And then I want to talk about some teams that possibly could push Xavier down to the 3 seed line.
We moved Xavier up because they're the only team out of the top 8 teams with 4 quad 1 wins. And even though like the rest of their games have been in quad 3 and 4, those 4 wins that they have really shows that they can beat the bigger teams and have success. So unlike all the other teams, we pretty much had to move them up because they were the only team that showed those numbers.
Luke, you were surprised at Michigan State being a 2 seed. They're 12th in the net. What on their line shows that they probably need to at least be considered right now for a 2 seed?
Yeah. Well, first I was kind of wondering, the blue on the net means that's our prediction right now for conference winners. So obviously I'd be arguing that one for sure. But yeah, I think they're solidified as a 2 seed because obviously they've won every game they're supposed to win. And they have those 3 quad 1 wins, which is more than, well, I mean, Xavier has 4, but other than that, that's more than anybody on our bracket.
And, the net on the left there, we do not just go 1, 2, 3, 4 and put them in seed line 1. But there are some patterns historically with the net rankings. And usually in the top 2 seed lines, you'll see single-digit seeds. Right now, Duke, Michigan State, Xavier are in the teens. Following that are 3 single-digit teams, LSU, Tennessee, and Villanova, which I think represent the small sample size of games. This is an interesting seed line between 3, 4, and 5. These teams are all very, very similar, and you could make arguments that any of these 12 teams could be moved up any line. So I'll take this line first. I think we left LSU and probably USC could have been up there because they're undefeated. And I think that's still important, and their net is pretty high. LSU's net's pretty high. That's kind of been gamed by really good margins of victories against other programs. Then it gets to be real tough. Your Tennessee and Villanova has really good net, but they have multiple losses in quad one, and so it becomes really difficult. What do you do with teams that the metrics are high, but their record is not as good? And then Ohio State has creeped in with 3 quad one wins and 2 losses. Honestly, we could make an argument that any of those 4, if not all 4, can move down for Auburn, Connecticut, Iowa State, USC, even Alabama, UCLA, Seton Hall, and Wisconsin sitting there in seeds 17 through 20. So, Luke, I'll come to you first. Let's look at seeds 4 and 5. Which teams in our seed line 4 and 5 do you think deserve to be maybe moved up to the 3 seed line?
For sure, I'm looking at Alabama. They beat Gonzaga and they beat Houston, which is like 2 really huge wins, especially Gonzaga on a 1 seed line. If you beat a team on a 1 seed line, that's going to help you out a ton. I know they just lost to Memphis, which is probably why they moved down to a 5. But still, I think those 2 wins outweigh that loss that they had in quad 1.
Luke brings up a good point, and I'm willing to move this for tomorrow's bracket, even though we don't have a meeting. I think maybe our group overreacted to the Memphis loss. That was their first road loss. They do have a loss against Iona, but that Gonzaga win has to maybe move. I think Alabama at least up to the 4 seed line, if not the 3 seed line. Cade, your thoughts on Alabama? Should we make a call tonight and maybe move those guys up? Your thoughts, Cade?
I don't think it'd be an awful move, but the big question is who to move down. Because when we look at wins and losses, it all looks the same. So I guess we'd have to go into the quality of wins. And you could say move down Connecticut because they just lost to West Virginia. But, yeah, it's really a toss-up. But I don't think it's a bad move.
You know, Cade, when you were saying that, who do you move down? I love that comment. That's, again, for those of you listening, this is what we like about our group. Really good thinking here, and the group think is a lot better than individual thinking. I think when we're done with the show, I'm going to go and move Alabama at least up to the 4 seed line, and I do think the team to move down is Connecticut. USC's undefeated, Iowa State's undefeated, Auburn only has 1 loss. I think Connecticut would be the one unless we move a Villanova, who has 3 losses down, Tennessee, but. Yeah, I think that's a move that we kind of make. We've gotten a lot of questions from our viewers about how do you guys make your decisions? Well, you're witnessing it right now, and sometimes we'll have at least 10 people in a meeting on Thursday morning shouting out ideas and, hey, take a look at this team. So I think we have a really good top 5 seed line. It's just UCLA has only lost to Gonzaga. They could possibly move up, and all of our 5 seeds have 2 quad 1 wins. So pretty interesting. Seton Hall does have some COVID issues besides UCLA. They might have to forfeit their Big East games. Guys, I'm not sure. I talked to our other 2 teacher sponsors tonight after school, how we handle that and keep track of that, because I think they're going to be forfeits. If you can't play a conference game in the Big East, it's a forfeit. So because of COVID, Seton Hall could move to 8-3, and I don't know how that works. You got to kind of keep that in mind that they weren't actually games played. But I think, Cade, I think our top 5, maybe a little bit of movement, but I think it's pretty solid. Would you agree?
Yes, most definitely.
Luke, any thoughts about any other movement, 3, 4, or 5?
You said something about UCLA, which I kind of agree with.
Yep.
Like their only loss was Gonzaga, and Gonzaga's a 1 seed, and that's their only loss. So,
right.
I mean, if you were wanting to make moves, I think that's where you'd look next. But I don't think you necessarily have to. But I think it's a spot to look at.
Yeah, and I'm leaning towards Tennessee or Villanova, but that single-digit net historically has been in the top 3 seed lines. And again, that might clear itself out over time. If Tennessee and Villanova fall down to 13 or 14, I think then those are the teams. We don't just look at the net by itself, but when you compare teams that are extremely close, that's the only reason that UCLA was initially slotted in the 5 seed line. But I agree. Alabama and UCLA probably need to be moved up. We'll move Alabama tomorrow. I'm not comfortable moving UCLA yet because I think Tennessee and Villanova are okay with their net. Let's take a look at the 6th seed line. Kate, I'm going to come to you. You go here on down 6 through 11, and it is really tight and confusing. Houston has the 5th best net. Texas has a 21 net, and they have no quad 1 or quad 2 wins. There are only, I think, 3 teams currently in our top 46 teams that do not have wins in quad 1 and 2. Is Houston and Texas too high? Do they need to drop down to 8, 9, or 10, in your opinion, despite how good we know they are and are going to be, in the future?
I think it'd be hard to move Houston down because their net is 5. So unless we feel okay with moving a team with a 5 net down, then yes. But like we said before, most of the single digit nets are normally up a lot higher. So I think if they win a game or 2, then we can move them. But right now, I think it's fine where it's at just because their net is so high.
Luke, I'm going to pose the same question, but I'm going to add something for you. Arkansas has 1 quad, 1 win, and their net is in the 60s. Kentucky's net is in the 50s and 60s and doesn't have that. And we have Kentucky out of the tournament right now. Why don't we move Arkansas and Kentucky up with no wins? Arkansas has a win. Why isn't Arkansas? Should we move Arkansas and Kentucky up here too? Because we feel in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks they might be here. We don't do that an awful lot, but boy, it looks weird for me to have Arkansas lower and Kentucky out. Your thoughts on Houston, Texas, Kentucky, Arkansas?
Yeah, we've always talked about how the nets kind of seems a little messed up. Like you don't really expect. It's kind of hits you random sometimes. But obviously you have to respect it because the people choosing, they're going to look at that. So, yeah, I agree with what Kate said. I don't think you can keep dropping Houston just because of their net solely. We already have them as a 6. That's 6, right? 6 or 5?
Yeah, we have them a 6 seed.
6, yeah. With a 5 net, it's hard to drop that further down. Texas, though, that would, if you were wanting to drop one of those 2 down, that would obviously be the one. But both of their nets are so high, that would be hard to move. And Kentucky and Arkansas, like you said, we project that they will have some wins and move up, but we don't really like to look on projections right now. We like to just look at what is right now. And once they get those wins, then we'll relook, and I'm sure they'll move in.
Yeah, and the reason we do that, we state this every show, but the reason we do that is because we want to practice for that time in March when the conference tournaments are being played, and it's a whole body of work. We want to be sharp in our decision-making. We're not ESPN. We're not CBS that's following these and knows the statistics. We look at the raw data. We look at who played, who was injured, which coach was in and out. Very similar to the committee. And a little bit of the eye test, but we do think, the scheduling matters, guys, too. Like Kentucky has played only 1 or 2 real tough teams. They are scheduled to play 3 or 4, and so their schedule will balance out. I think the reason Arkansas and Kentucky, their net is low and thus lower for us is because they just really haven't played much of a schedule yet. And when that balances out, I think we'll definitely see Arkansas and Kentucky moving back up. Okay, so the next question is we're up to 7, 8, and 9. Again, I think this is typically where you see some smaller conference teams, conference winners, those in the blue on the left of our spreadsheet. If you're listening on audio, you're just going to have to visualize a little bit or go find the YouTube. But the conference winners, we have Colorado State here. We have San Francisco, who's leading the West Coast. Gonzaga will probably get that bid at some point. We have UAB sitting in here in this 7, 8, 9 range. This is where it gets difficult because these schools don't play the schedules that the bigger schools get, but yet they're very good. A team like Providence, Luke, is tough because they have a 39 net and they have a quad 3 loss, but they have 3 quad 1 wins. there's reasons to move them up, and there's reasons that quad 3 loss to move them down. Quick thoughts on how we kind of handle that.
Yeah. Well, I like to look at it is they have 3 quad 1 wins compared to 1 quad 3 loss. So that's 3 big wins and 1 bad loss. So I always just try and look at and think, well, three is greater than 1. So
that's why you're so good in calculus, dude.
Yeah, there you go. So I think, that's their argument that would help them out quite a bit.
Cade, how do you handle looking at personally a team like Illinois? They lose a game without Kofi Coburn to Marquette early on. Then they lose a game with everyone back right away. And now they've had some guard issues out. Curbelo, they had a lot of positive publicity early, have 3 losses. What's good about Illinois' resume sitting there at number 30, in your opinion?
To me, it's the fact that they haven't lost, like they don't have any bad losses. So they haven't lost in quad 3 or quad 4. And the fact that their only losses are in quad 1, we consider those like to be not bad losses. And since most of them being without some of their best players, that just proves that, they can still win the games that they should win. But yeah, I mean, especially like no other losses in any other quadrants just looks good, because with a team like Providence having that 1 loss in quad 3, it kind of throws you off a little bit. But then again, like Luke said, 3 is greater than 1. So yeah.
Big smile on the sponsor's face for those of you watching the video, because when you teach these guys how to interpret the bracket and they throw good information back at you, they paid attention and listen, and decision-making is so important for our young people. It's just fun to spend this half an hour with these guys. So let's go to seed line number 9. It's over here, 33 through 36. And Cade, there's one surprising team, Minnesota. Everyone picked Minnesota to be 14th in the Big Ten. New coach, all kinds of transfers coming from Division 2 and lower schools. No one thought Minnesota was going to be any good, yet they are 36th in the net, 9-1 overall, 3-0 on the road, 2-0 in neutral with 2 quad 1 wins. Minnesota, do we really have them in the bracket over Michigan, Indiana, and some of those teams? Your quick thoughts on Minnesota so far?
I like it. I mean, I think it's cool for a team that was predicted to be so low to have such a great resume like this, and especially to be honest, we might even move them up, because I know they haven't really played any games, but there's some teams like up in some other quadrants, or not quadrants, up higher in the rankings
lines, yep,
that also have 2 quad 1 wins and no other losses. So I mean, the fact that their net is so high doesn't really help them out, but I think it's cool to see them kind of defy the odds here early on.
Our 9 seed line is some surprises. Minnesota, Wyoming is sitting there because of a 20 net. They may play themselves out. If Minnesota goes 8-12 in the Big Ten, they're probably not making the tournament. Wyoming came out of nowhere. Iowa was thought to be 10th or 11th, 9th, 10th or 11th in the Big Ten. They had a really good start. You're seeing a pattern here of teams either having a good start by playing some big teams, or Kentucky, Arkansas not playing some teams, Illinois losing early, Michigan losing early. And again, that's why this is way too early to do this. But Luke, I'm coming to you with Iowa. Got off to a great start, winning some games, and then all of a sudden now have lost 3 in a row. They're 3 quad 1 losses. What are we going to do with Iowa?
What helps you being in a conference like that is you can sort of afford to lose a couple games compared to teams like BYU or some other small schools that you can't lose. Like because you ain't got very many good wins, so you can't really afford to lose one of those games. In Iowa, like they battled with Purdue the whole time, and they have a tough schedule. They're in a tough conference, so they'll be battling in there as long as they keep winning and chipping off those games that they should.
So that brings us to our 10-11 seed line, and we even got 2 teams in a 12 seed line right now in a play-in game. And man, I think our 10 seed line solid. Arkansas, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Cincinnati. They've had some nice wins, but you're starting to see nets in the high 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s start creeping in. You got to have some wins. All of these teams have quad 1 wins. Some of these teams have additional quad 2 wins. The problem coming is the total number of losses. Virginia Tech has 4 losses, Marquette 3, Louisville 3. Memphis has lost four in a row before beating Alabama and has 2 quad 3 losses, what we consider to be bad losses. Wow, good names, teams we think are going to be pretty good, Wichita State, Virginia Tech, but a lot of losses early. Cade, that's kind of a yuck look right now. What are you thinking about the back end of our bracket?
I think where we have teams is pretty solid, but at this point, we kind of just got to let them play out and see what teams can solidify themselves as good teams. So just them being able to play more games and get better wins will obviously help all these teams out and kind of clean up the bottom of our bracket.
If you had one team or last 6 to drop out, who would you drop out?
I think you might look at a team like Louisville. I know they didn't have their coach for one of their losses, but just the fact that, they've played they have 2 games in quad 1 that, obviously if you're playing those games and you want to move up in the bracket, you got to win those. But then having a quad 2 and 3 loss, it's obviously tough for a team like that to really move them up any further. And then there's teams under them that would have wins in different areas that we could compare it to and then move them up. But yeah, I think Louisville might be the team to drop.
Cade, we're going back to you, our last 6. What do you think of our last 6 teams, and then who would you drop out?
Yeah, I think I like what Cade said. Like, you can't really beat yourself up too much about this down here. You just got to let it play out. You'll make some moves, and then all of a sudden someone will win a game or someone will lose a game, and then you're changing it all over again. Yeah. So, I think you kind of just got to see what happens. Just like Memphis. Like, they weren't in the bracket, and then all of a sudden they beat Alabama, and they're in. And still, though, if I were have to drop somebody out, I think I would choose Memphis. Just because I think they'll be in eventually. But as of right now, looking at this data, having a 6-4 record and having 2 quad 3 losses, I feel like that's hard to keep you in. Even though they had that big win, I still feel like that's kind of hard to keep you in as of right now. And something we haven't mentioned yet, which obviously as a Purdue fan, I'm going to know a lot about this right now. You got to win a couple games on the road too. And down here looking at these teams, Memphis is the only one that doesn't have a road win.
That's a great find.
Going up back at the top, Purdue is the same way. And they're not even close to the same team when they're not at home.
Road wins matter. It's better in the net. It gets you quality wins. Boy, you talked me into Memphis. I put them in just because the Alabama, when I sorted it this morning. Virginia Tech, I don't think is really solid. You can make an argument that DePaul, with its 1 quad 1 win, is likely to fall out. But then here's the ultimate question for our viewers who are looking at the spreadsheet and those that are listening. We are now scrolling down to our teams that are under consideration but out. Utah State, Indiana, Northwestern, Washington State, Mississippi State, Michigan, Davidson, Kentucky, Central Florida, Texas Christian, Utah, and St. Louis. Who do you put in? I'll just throw a quick question, then we got to try to wrap up the show. We're running overtime. We're doing a really good job of discussing this stuff. But, Luke, of those teams, which would be the most likely for you to argue to go in? I'm seeing very few quad 1 wins. I'm seeing hardly any quad 2 wins and a lot of quad 3 and 4 losses in this list. If we want to move Virginia Tech out, DePaul out, Memphis, Louisville out, we got to put somebody in. Who you doing? Who you putting in, Luke?
Oh, boy. Well, I think we said we don't really want to look at the future too much, but when you're down here, it's kind of hard not to. So I think like Kentucky or Michigan. Michigan they have no losses. They don't have a loss in quad 3 or 4. And so, that's solid. but obviously they have no wins. But I think they'll turn it around eventually. They just have too much talent. Kentucky the same way. It's kind of hard not to look at projectability here when you're down this low.
Cade, who's your team that you're going to take out if you had to?
I'm kind of with Luke. I like Michigan, but at this point, everyone kind of looks the same. So I think teams just kind of have to stop losing. I know that's hard to say and hard to do, but they definitely need to get wins to be able to like go down and look at a team like Kentucky and see that okay, they're starting to win now. We can move them up and drop another team out. But yeah, I think maybe come back to me in a week, wait for some teams to play some more games, and then I might have a more detailed answer.
That's exactly why a lot of people don't pay attention to us until late January, February, because it starts really making sense when you got 15, 16 games. But I know there's a lot of junkies out there that want to know where their team sits right now, and I think we're junkies too for talking for half an hour about something in December. But I think those are good picks. So there's some big bracket games. Finals week was this week, so there wasn't a lot of great matchups this week that really moved the dial, but there are a couple this weekend if you're listening and want to tune in. Tomorrow night, St. Bonaventure versus Virginia Tech. Again, teams fighting for seeding. Villanova and Creighton. The Big East starts its conference, and boy, there's a lot of good teams there. So every win is going to be important. Every win's probably going to be a quad 1 or quad 2. St. Mary's versus San Diego State. Again, a couple smaller schools that have been in brackets in the past play on Friday. On Saturday, the Crossroad Classics. Butler, Purdue, Indiana, Notre Dame. Those are games for Purdue and Indiana that only can probably hurt them if they lose. I don't know if they help them a lot if they win. Tennessee versus Memphis, a huge game for Memphis to get another quality win. Gonzaga, Texas Tech, big game. Here's a sleeper, DePaul, Northwestern. Northwestern's under consideration. DePaul just snuck in. Someone's going to win and put themselves in better positions there. And then Big East again, Marquette, Xavier, Providence, UConn, and then a West Virginia versus UAB. West Virginia sneaking in at that 9-10 range. They need to win. UAB is fighting for seeding as a smaller conference. So what games stand out for you, Cade, in this weekend? Not a huge slate, but yet there are some interesting games. Cade, which game for you, bud?
Did you ask for me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yep.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I said Tennessee, Memphis, just because Memphis is so low in the bracket right now, and if they get another good win, it'll definitely add to their resume. And for both of these teams, it'll be kind of a confidence boost game. So it won't really be a bad loss, but it'll definitely add to their resume.
And Luke, which game of that light list are you looking to watch?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Villanova, Creighton. Villanova, we're keeping them up so high because they're losing to these great teams. They haven't really beat anybody, but we can't drop them too much. They're losing to teams that are really good. And it's starting to get to the time now where, okay, now you got to win some. So I think this is a huge game for them that they really need to win in order to stay up towards the top.
I'm going to watch Marquette, Xavier. I think Marquette is an up-and-coming team with Shaka Smart, but they're going to need to get some wins. They're kind of on the fringe, 8-3. Obviously, my IU needs to win because if they lose to Notre Dame, that really is going to be a quad 3 loss that they can't afford to get with their weak resume right now. So as we wrap it up, it's our game winner segment. The question for today is, what are your favorite teams? What do you want your favorite teams to do? Cade, you're battling COVID. Luke, you're battling poor outside shooting outside Mackey, Indiana. I'm battling no one tough on the schedule and no big wins. So it's holiday wish season time. Cade, we'll start with you. What's your wish for Ohio State? Cade, we're having probably a little – I'm lagging here a little bit with you, I think. Go ahead with your Ohio State comment. We may have lost Cade there. Luke, I'll just throw it to you. Cade wants even more upsets for Ohio State. he's hoping that they get some wins. Luke, what's your game? What's your holiday wish?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping Purdue can learn to shoot the ball when they're not playing at Mackey Arena. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. You shoot the lights out of the gym, and then you go away from your home court, and you can't hit the broadside of a barn. So I'm hoping they figure that out.
Cade, are you back with us, bud, or not? I'm not sure he is. We'll just pass on him. There he is. Maybe not. All right, we're just gonna call it a night. Yeah, there you are. What are your holiday wishes?
Well, if you can still hear me, hopefully you can. I would just want to see some upsets. I think that'd be cool. Obviously Luke doesn't like to hear this, but some surprising wins for a Rutgers team to beat a top-ranked Purdue team, and to see a Ron Harper Jr., another Ron Harper Jr. hit a half-court buzzer beater to beat the number one team. I think that'd be a cool little Christmas gift.
A subtle dig on our panel tonight. I hope for health of everyone in the community, our community, health in the sports community as this COVID is hitting again. It's kind of fun to watch sports. We don't want any interruption, but we want everyone to stay healthy. And I hope you enjoy family. And we always want wins for your favorite team, even if you do like Purdue, even if you do like Ohio State. Everyone's entitled to their favorite team. So that'll do it for this episode of the Bracket U. We'll be back in about 3 weeks. So we're going to take 2 weeks off for the holiday. We'll be back the week of January 4th. Until then, check out our website, DelphiBracketology.com. Follow us on Twitter at Delphi Brackets and Instagram at Delphi Bracketology for updates and information. If you have any questions, go to those places. We'll be glad to try to interact with you. Check out our donation page where you can help us with all costs associated with our club. We got a nice $50 donation, helps with the internet fees and everything like that. We appreciate that. And more importantly, we hope that your team wins the big ones and wins them on the road.